Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutura districts classified as high-risk zones. Number of COVID-19 patients in Sri Lanka exceeds 100. Curfew imposed in Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutura districts until further notice. People living in Tawadi, Jaffna ordered to remain indoors following a detection of a positive COVID-19 patient. Government sets up new task force headed by Basil Rajapaksa to distribute essential items to households. Number of COVID-19 patients worldwide exceeds 300,000. WHO warns coronavirus pandemic accelerating.
Main sponsor.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. On to your lead story now. The government today declared the districts of Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutura as high-risk zones for the spread of COVID-19. Now, meanwhile, residents of the Tawadi area in Jaffna have been temporarily restricted from leaving their homes. The curfew imposed in the high-risk zones was reimposed from 2 p.m. today until further notice. Meanwhile, residents of Tawadi in Jaffna have been restricted from leaving their homes after a person tested positive for the virus in the area. Our correspondent said that roads in the area have been closed off to prevent people from entering or leaving the area. The Tawadi area is home to around 300 families.
We have instructed those who attended the church ceremony in the Jaffna district to undergo self-quarantine. However, there were 17 people who had close contact with the pastor. They have been sent to a quarantine center in Jaffna. 212 people have been quarantined in their homes owing to the incident in Arialai. 17 of them who had contact with the person who tested positive for the virus were sent to a quarantine center in Palali. We have issued instructions for the residents of the Tawadi area to undergo self-quarantine. This situation could have been prevented if the pastor who had arrived from overseas had abided by the regulations of the government. The affected patient's wife is a Samudhi officer. We have been informed that she had been distributing Samudhi allowances among 214 beneficiaries. Accordingly, they will be quarantined. The province is on a lockdown. Connection to other provinces have been suspended. We have given the pharmacies the permission to deliver medicines from door to door if required. There are highly populated areas in the northern province. At the same time, there are areas which lack health facilities. Around 1,200 people who arrived from overseas have been quarantined in the northern province. 240 people have also been quarantined over the recent incident. Attempting to overcome the coronavirus through religious rituals is contrary to the viewpoint of the World Health Organization. The newspaper which gave publicity to this event should also understand that it is an unlawful act. Meanwhile, the pastor who arrived in the country on the 15th of March for the church service and later tested positive for COVID-19 is receiving treatment in Switzerland. A person from the Tawadi area in Jaffna who had contracted the disease after maintaining contact with the pastor is receiving treatment at the IDH hospital. While curfew continues in the districts of Colombo, Kalutura and Gampaha, what is the situation of the remaining districts? Let's take a look. Curfew for the Putlam district and 5 districts in the northern province will be in effect until 6 a.m. on the 27th of this month and will be reimposed at 12 noon on the same day. Curfew in all of the districts will be in effect until 6 a.m. on Thursday, the 26th, and will be reimposed at 12 noon on the same day. Travelling between districts and the transportation of tourists when curfew is in effect is completely prohibited. The government has allowed for cultivation and farming to take place during curfew across the island in all districts. The total number of COVID-19 patients in the country has risen to 102, out of which 2 people have already recovered. Now, according to the statistics we received from the Ministry of Health, as at 5 p.m., the number of affected patients receiving treatment at hospitals currently stands at 98. The patients are receiving treatment at the IDH, the Valikanda Base Hospital and the Mullaria Base Hospital. Now, taking a look at the patient distribution when it comes to the gender, majority of these patients are male with a percentage of 71 and 29% of the patients are female.
COVID-19 patient distribution when it comes to the age. Majority is reported between the ages of 41 to 50 with a percentage of 35.6, and 17.2% of these patients are at the ages of 31 to 40. It is also noticeable that the percentage of affected youths has increased. Meanwhile, a community physician at the IDH hospital tested positive for COVID-19, and 2 people have left the hospital thus far recovering from the disease. As you all can remember, the very first patient was a Chinese national who was fully recovered and discharged by the IDH, and the second patient was the first Sri Lankan who tested positive for COVID-19, who was 52 years old and who was a tour guide. He was recovered and he discharged from the IDH as well. The tour guide was diagnosed with the virus on the 11th of March. Now, speaking to Newsfirst today, Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jasinger, spoke about the increasing number of COVID-19 patients in the country. What you will now see a graph on your screen, and what you see on the graph is in blue is the daily number of reported cases, which is at a manageable level, and the government is saying to maintain the graph at this level is a challenge and need the public support. With the social distancing, it would be possible to manage the situation, unlike in other countries where they failed. But what's shown in red is a cumulative increase of patients in the country. Although it shows an increase in the graph, what the government authorities are saying is that it is manageable as long as we continue to take measures as and when it requires. Let's now listen to what the Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jasinger, had to say.
We are in a control at the moment, but of course it's too early to predict. We call it epidemiological curve, and if you don't control, if you don't take measures, the number of patients and the number of deaths can go exponentially up, and then afterwards, of course, it will come down later, but at a cost. So what we really need is a flat curve where the length of the epidemic may be longer, but then the peak is height of the peak is less, so that number of casualties, number of deaths, number of patients would be lower even at the peak, so that the health system can cope up with this epidemic at any given time.
The Director General also spoke about the importance of social distancing at this time of need. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Social distancing is the most paramount important factor. Now, why the government imposes curfew? It is not because of insurgency. It is not because of anything else. Because of this virus, and we don't want people to gather, because this virus doesn't grow on earth, right? It can stay for some time alive. Basically, if you and me are close by, if I have virus, I cough, and then you get the infection, through one-to-one, because the virus needs a human body to grow.
Curfew in the Colombo, Gampa, Putlam and Northern Province was lifted for 8 hours today. Let's take a look at how large crowds gathered at shops, supermarkets and fuel stations today after the curfew restrictions were lifted.
With curfew restriction being lifted in the Colombo district this morning, masses of people gathered at supermarkets, pharmacies and fuel stations. While some factions followed the guidelines specified by health authorities, certain factions failed to comply in this regard. Many from the Sri Javardhanapura Kotte and Nugegoda areas had gathered today to purchase essential items. Large crowds in the Koronava and Mulleriya areas had gathered opposite supermarkets and shops today as well. Lifting of the curfew also attracted long queues at fuel stations and pharmacies today. After curfew was lifted this morning, this was the situation in Kutikawatha today. Masses of people in the Mount Lavinia and Vallavata areas also formed long queues today to purchase essential items. This was how the residents of Ratmalana stocked up on essential goods when the curfew was lifted. Lifting of curfew restrictions attracted large crowds opposite shops in Maradana as well. Many who gathered at the Manning Market today did not comply with the guidelines specified by health authorities. Large crowds gathered in the Migura town as well. Certain factions that had formed the queue since 6 this morning followed specified health guidelines. At 6 a.m. today, curfew was lifted in the 5 districts of the northern province as well. Large crowds gathered in the town of Jaffna, Mullaitivu and Kilinochchi as well. Locals from villages in the Jaffna district had arrived in the town of Vaunia today to purchase essential items. Masses flocked the town of Mana as well. After curfew restrictions were lifted this morning, large crowds on the Vattala and Jail areas formed queues at fuel stations and supermarkets. This was the situation in the Gampaha and Ganemula towns today. After curfew restrictions were lifted, masses crowded the Kiribathgoda and Mirigama towns as well. This was the situation in the Paligoda fish market today when curfew was lifted. Crowds flocked to the fuel stations and shops in the Putlam town as well. Large number of crowds were seen at shops and supermarkets in the Chilaw area as well. Our correspondent said people complied with health guidelines only in areas where security forces were present.
We now have Shamir Rasuldin in our news studios with the director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute, Dr. Jairuwan Bandara. Shamir.
Thank you very much, Azra. Let's get into bolts and nuts right away, Dr. Jairuwan Bandara. We are now currently almost in a partial lockdown for the last 10 days. Yeah. The quarantine period stands at nearly 14 days. However, the government has already announced that Colombo, Kaluthara, Gampaha as high risk areas as far as the COVID-19 virus is concerned. So, when will we see an end to all this?
Well, that is a more difficult question to ask, Hamid, because until the people control spreading this infection, it's very difficult to predict about this the end of this. Lifting up the curfew, because the reservoir for this infection is mankind. So, if people start to take this infection themselves into their body, and this virus can multiply until they develop immunity. So, if during that period, if people start to hang around, maybe spreading virus to the other people, so everyone who get infected will be a reservoir and the dangerous person to the society, spreading infection. So, if people do not behave safely and self-quarantine if they are suspecting that they are infected, so that is the danger. That is why we can't predict about the future of this infection. So that is why government has imposed this curfew and advising people, and there are many other measures to keep the people into home, inside the home, and encouraging people to be home quarantine.
Dr. Bandara, right now as you speak, the government has not declared this to be a community disease. Am I right to say so?
Well, exactly not declared, but it's a communicable disease. It's a communicable disease. The thing is, there are scientific basis to declare it as communicable disease, but it's a quarantinable disease. That is the thing mainly the people has to understand, and people has to realize that it's a quarantinable disease, and that is why people has to respond what the government says, and the media and the news lines like this advising people. People has to obey these commands.
Dr. Bandara, today we saw when the curfew was lifted for a few hours, people wearing masks. However, when you visit the website of the epidemiology unit, it says very clearly that wearing masks is not mandatory. How far is this claim true?
Yes.
Because contradictory statements are coming through from the police forces as well as the health authorities as well as the epidemiology unit. Now people are thinking whether they are supposed to wear a mask or not.
Well, Shamir, personally I would say it's not a very bad habit, but the wearing mask means many things. That we are using surgical masks to protect other people from our infection. So during surgeries and other surgical procedures, when we are doing when we are practicing inside the hospitals, so we wear a surgical mask to stop giving our infection to the person who is undergoing the surgery. So when the medical staff working in ICUs, we use N95 masks. That is to protect ourselves from patients' infection, especially for ICU care during this COVID-19 infection. So people who are working in the ICUs, the staff, medical staff wear N95 mask. That is special mask to get ourselves protective from the infectious people.
But do we have enough masks right now in Sri Lanka?
Of course, for the medical staff and the other procedures, yes, we do. We do have. And government has taken step to import more number of masks, surgical masks to the country, and government has encouraged the local producers to produce more surgical masks. Currently, we have enough masks at the moment for our purposes of treating people, and in future, of course, government has taken enormous measures to provide enough number of masks to the public. If they are to be advised to wear a mask, we can provide that number of masks to the public.
Dr. Jarwa Bandara, as we speak right now, we see in social media that the United States government has already began testing on patients an antiviral drug. However, the WHO says that they are yet to find a concrete answer to this virus at large.
Yes.
So right now, what is the treatment administered to the patients in Sri Lanka?
Actually, at the moment, for the patients who are in ICU care, so Sri Lankan government also, in a situation to start kind of antiviral treatment such as chloroquine, but yet to be decided by the clinicians, not yet imposed in the country. But government is ready to advise or start with the treatment of chloroquine to the patients who are inside the ICU care, if clinician recommend that one. But it has not yet started. So actually, in the world, it has not recommended fully by WHO or any other. There are no strong evidence or strong, let's say, evidence-based any kind of information to start this chloroquine to the patients. Maybe it has not proven giving a benefit.
Dr. Bandara, right now there is scare about COVID-19. However, there is also flu that is spreading in Sri Lanka at present. So during the time of curfew, let's say someone does get the fever or a sore throat, what must they do? Are they supposed to run to the Medical Research Institute or to a private hospital? What steps must they take?
Well, during any kind of fever does not mean that you are infected with COVID-19. For any kind of infection, if you are getting, fever is a common symptom. So fever does not mean that you have COVID-19. If you have been at home during past few days, maybe 1 week or 10 days, so that you are pretty sure that you have not contacted the patient with COVID-19 because you have not been with other people in the society. So then you no need to worry about your health condition because you are pretty sure that you have not been contacted a patient with COVID-19. That is the assurance what you have to take yourself. But if you are suspecting that you have been to community and you have you had some contact with unknown person, and if you are having continuous rise in fever and cough and shortness of breath, of course it's better to contact one of the physician, that means the MBBS doctor in your area, and discuss about this matter. Don't forget, if you are suspecting that you have COVID-19 infection, you better wear a mask, because when you are going to a doctor, there may be several people in queue to meet the doctor. So if you have COVID-19, you may spread to that infection to the doctor as well as the people who are with you to visit the doctor. So it's a very good management plan. If you have infection, it's your responsibility. You have to wear a mask and deal with the other people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jarwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute in the country. If you are worried, this is a time to be worried. If you are taking some medication, if you have underlying issues with regard to your health, you need to be careful. This is the time to be selfish. So remember, when you are on your own, we are always with you, reporting to you first and fast and keeping you up to date on all the developments that happens. This is News First. Thank you, Shamir.
Thank you, Dr. Jairon Bandara and Shamir, of course, for joining us on our news broadcast live. Moving on with more local news. This was a situation witnessed at economic centers after the curfew was lifted in the Colombo district today. While crowds flocked to the Narahimpita dedicated economic center, a shortage of vegetables and other essential goods was observed in certain shops.
There are queues of people who are waiting to purchase eggs, fish and vegetables. There is a queue outside the Satosa store as well. The people of all warehouses have come here to purchase something. Otherwise, they will have to starve at their homes. There is a queue to purchase bread as well.
This was a situation at the Ratmulana dedicated economic center today. People faced difficulties while purchasing items as some goods were sold at high rates while there was a shortage in some other goods. Large crowds of people were witnessed at the Wayangoda and Mirigama economic centers. This was a situation at the Manim market. Farmers were informed to bring their produce to the Tamuttegama economic center. However, traders were not present to purchase the goods from farmers this morning.
We cannot sell these goods as there are few vendors. We will distribute these among the villagers or use it to produce compost. We have clearly informed them not to take back their produce and sell them by the use of public address systems. The minister has instructed us to send these stocks to the Manning market in Colombo.
70 farmers who are registered with the economic center said that they could not sell their goods at reasonable rates. Meanwhile, traders were not present to purchase goods from farmers who arrived at the Dambula dedicated economic center. Minister Janaka Bandara Tennakon and former provincial councillor Pramita Bandara Tennakon arrived at the economic center thereafter. A solution was provided to the farmers following talks with the administration of the economic center.
We immediately informed the President, Chamal Rajapaksa and Basil Rajapaksa, and sought a solution to this issue. They said that they would send us funds and instructed us to purchase the goods from farmers and to send them to areas in Colombo, Gampaha and in the southern region which are facing a shortage of vegetables. We hope to purchase and sell these goods at reasonable rates. The curfew is not in effect. The farmers can bring their goods to the economic center without any difficulties.
This was the situation at the Paliagoda fish market this morning. Many vendors and customers at the fish market were not following the safety procedures issued by authorities. The Chilla fish market was also crowded with people, and again, both vendors and customers were not acting according to the prescribed safety procedures. The fishing community in the country resumed their livelihoods today. Permission was not granted to engage in fishing activities during curfew, but later the Ministry of Fisheries held discussions with the Navy and permission was granted to engage in fishing activities between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Fishermen in Trincomalee went out to sea today. This was the situation at the Galle Fisheries Harbour today. Although on an average day, about 400 fishing vessels set sail from the fisheries harbour, many of the fishermen did not set out to sea today. Under the prevailing situation, many ice manufacturing companies have halted their operation, and as such, fishermen are facing challenges in preserving their catch.
The government has announced that a mechanism to distribute goods without any disruptions to the general public will come into effect from tomorrow. A task force headed by Basil Rajapaksa has been appointed to manage the process of selling goods from door to door in the country. The task force comprises several entities including secretaries of ministries, district secretaries and divisional secretaries. The Presidential Secretariat announced that leading supermarket chains and suppliers have been instructed to engage in door-to-door sales of essential goods.
A committee has been appointed under the leadership of Basil Rajapaksa, comprising of representatives of government organizations and the private sector. This committee aims to restrict people to their homes and to implement a mechanism that would allow them to obtain the essential goods from their homes. We hope to implement this program with key suppliers and stores such as Satosa.
Dal and salmon will be distributed. There will be big onions and potatoes as well. The people can purchase what they want. We have prepared packs ranging from 500 to 2000 rupees. In addition to that, vegetables and coconut will be distributed in lorries. The assistance of the civil security force will be obtained to sell these among the residents of Demotagoda, Buralla, Maradana and Maligavatta. We have made arrangements for those who are financially capable of purchasing goods only on a daily basis. We have obtained the required data from the divisional secretariats and the Gram Nilgari officers. We will distribute these goods based on that. There are certain companies which have door-to-door facilities. We have held talks with them as well. When we inform them to sell these packs from door to door, they will do so. Sometimes we might decide to open a few retail stores while the curfew is in effect for people to purchase goods based on their requirements. However, at certain Satosa outlets, we have seen that stock sufficient for several weeks and have been purchased within an hour. Some people are purchasing goods excessively. It is pointless to do such things.
Here are some of the decisions made by the government in light of the current situation of the country. A program has been initiated to distribute vegetables to citizens during the curfew period. The program will commence daily from 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. from the Mani Market in Colombo. Therefore, permission has been granted for vegetables to be transported into the Mani Market in Colombo and to transport vegetables out of the Mani Market to other areas in the country. Permission has also been granted to transport fish used for human consumption and also for fishing communities to engage in fishing regardless of the curfew in effect. Pharmacies will remain open during the period of the curfew. The Ministry of Health notes that decision has been reached taking into account the hardships faced by patients who obtain medicine from hospital clinics and pharmacies. Minister of Health Pavitra Manyarachi has informed the acting IGP to make the necessary arrangements for pharmacies to remain operational even during the period of curfew. The Prime Minister's media in a statement said that the support of all party leaders and public representatives in the recently dissolved Parliament will be obtained to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. The Prime Minister had made this decision following a meeting with representatives of all parties at Temple Trees.
Former President Maithripala Sirisena, former opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, former Speaker Karu Jayasuriya, Vijitha Herath, Dayasiru Jayasekara and Rauf Hakim were among those present at the meeting. A meeting will be convened with the participation of party leaders to obtain their suggestions with regard to curbing the spread of COVID-19. During today's party leaders meeting, the Director General of Health Services expressed the following views regarding the current situation in the country. The Defence Secretary, Inspector General of Police, the Army Commander and high-level officials from the health and defence sectors were present during the meeting. I respect the manner in which everyone present expressed their views to combat the coronavirus, irrespective of any political differences. We can work together with the Presidential Task Force appointed by the President. We will formulate and implement a plan involving the leaders of all parties. The President has instructed to issue a food card for those in low-income families. We respect your opinion as well. We gave permission for farming since the curfew was imposed. From today onwards, we will draw our attention towards the fisheries and plantation industries and also on self-enterprises. We also hope to see the operations of industries attached to the BOI. We will ensure that essential items such as medicines are supplied and that our country's economy does not collapse as a whole. We request all political leaders present here to put forward their suggestions.
Meanwhile, the first group of people returned to the island from overseas who were subjected to mandatory quarantine by the Sri Lanka Army left their respective centres today following a successful completion of the quarantine process.
According to the army, 203 individuals at the Poonani Quarantine Centre and 108 individuals at the Kandakadu Quarantine Centre were released from the mandatory quarantine process today. Those who left the Kandakadu Quarantine Centre had arrived from Italy and South Korea on the 10th of this month. Lunch and all other facilities were provided to the group departing home by the army camps in Kurnagala. The bus carrying the group travelled to Kandy, Galle, Colombo and Mathura to drop them off at their respective residences.
In news overseas on COVID-19, 334,981 cases of COVID-19 have been reported globally with 14,652 deaths. More than 100,000 people have recovered from the coronavirus. 189 countries and territories have been affected by the virus. Now, the World Health Organization has warned that the new coronavirus pandemic is clearly accelerating. Monday was the deadliest day in the United States' fight against the COVID-19 disease caused by the coronavirus, with more than 100 new deaths reported. Strict new curbs on life in the UK to tackle the spread of the coronavirus have been announced by the Prime Minister. Also, the UK death toll has reached to 355. China has announced it will lift the lockdown on Wuhan, the city at the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has announced a 21-day lockdown starting from midnight today as a major step in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. However, all essential services will continue to remain functional.
China has said it would relax many restrictions on travel to and from Hubei, the province where the coronavirus outbreak began, as the United Kingdom announced strict controls on movement to slow down the spread of COVID-19. The UK move comes after the country reported 52 new deaths following the imposition of strict lockdowns in Spain, France and Italy as Europe reels from a pandemic from what the World Health Organization has warned is accelerating. The Italian government has announced tougher lockdown rules and restrictions as the country struggles with the increasing death toll. Thailand's government is set to declare a state of emergency as the outbreak continues to infect hundreds across the country. Tesla boss Elon Musk says he has donated 1,255 ventilators to officials in Los Angeles to meet demand as the pandemic becomes more severe. Major airlines in the United States are preparing themselves for a voluntary shutdown of essentially all passenger flights. Japan's service sector shrank at the fastest pace on record in March and factory activity at its fastest in about a decade. The slowdown in manufacturing and services raises the risk of a sharp downturn in the world's third largest economy. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said about half of all government employees were staying at home as part of measures to contain the coronavirus outbreak. Bahrain's finance minister Sheikh Salman bin Khalifa Al Khalifa has announced that his country will soon deliver a stimulus package worth $11.41 billion. Taiwan has reported 20 new additional coronavirus cases, taking its tally up to 215 cases. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern urged New Zealanders to reduce contact with others to a bare minimum in preparation for a one-month lockdown from midnight tomorrow. Myanmar has reported its first confirmed case of coronavirus. Cuba is the latest country to impose a lockdown to curb the spread of the coronavirus, banning Cubans from leaving, closing schools and suspending inter-regional public transport.
Sri Lankan Airlines has expressed disappointment over posts that are being circulated on social media to discriminate the staff of the national air carrier over the COVID-19 infection.
The statement added that operational staff undergo regular and recurrent training of flying under contagion situations and are regularly updated on operational safety, adhering to the directives of the World Health Organization and under the safety and procedural guidance issued by the International Air Transport Association for cabin crew, technical staff and cargo handling.
The Sri Lanka's rupee weakened further today due to high demand for dollars amid the uncertainty following the coronavirus outbreak. The US dollar traded at a selling price of 190.62 rupees with compared to Friday's close of 189 rupees. The stock market was closed today, and also issuing a media release, the Colombo Stock Exchange said in view of the extension of ongoing curfew in the districts of Colombo, Gampa and Puttlam, the Colombo Stock Exchange has declared the period from 25th to the 27th of March as market holidays. The Gamma team has decided to conduct an art competition to encourage every one of you to use their time at home creatively. Share your creative art on what you would like to see in Sri Lanka as and when we emerge out of these present challenges. There is no age limit for this competition. All you have to do is WhatsApp us your work of art on the theme Nagitumu Sri Lanka on 0777 6000020. I'll repeat the number to you, 0777 6000020. The top 10 best artworks will be shared on the Newsfirst Facebook page, which has over 1 million followers. And that's the wrap of this edition of Primetime News. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Mazra Hassan. Take very good care of yourself and good night.